Hi, and welcome back to the English Talk community, the podcast where we focus on helping you become more confident in speaking English, no matter where you're starting from. I'm Julia, and I'm really happy you're here with me today. Whether you're walking, commuting, cooking, or just taking a moment to yourself, thank you for choosing this moment to learn and grow with your English. Let me start with a question. Do you ever feel like you understand English pretty well, but when it's time to speak, everything just stops? Maybe you freeze or you start to panic, and suddenly it's like all the words you've learned disappear. Have you ever studied really hard, spent hours watching videos, using apps, even reading books, and yet when someone asks you a simple question in English, you can't answer smoothly? If that sounds familiar, I want you to know, you are not alone. This happens to so many people. You see, learning a language is not just about understanding. It's also about using what you understand, and that's where a lot of learners get stuck. They can listen to a podcast, they can read a menu, they can understand a YouTube video, but when it comes time to speak, to actually say something out loud, that's where the problems begin. And it's frustrating, isn't it? You've spent time, effort, maybe even money, but when you try to have a conversation, your confidence disappears. So let me ask again. Do you understand English but feel blocked when speaking? Do you sometimes avoid situations where you need to speak English because you're afraid of making mistakes or sounding awkward? Do you ever feel like everyone else speaks better than you, and maybe you're just not good at languages? If you've had any of these thoughts, I want to stop right now and tell you, none of that means you're failing. In fact, the very fact that you're listening to this podcast tells me that you're serious about improving, and that's the most important part. Today, we're going to talk about why this happens, why so many people, maybe even you, still can't speak English confidently, even though they've been learning for months or even years. More importantly, we're going to talk about what you can do, starting today, to fix that. And I want to make something really clear from the beginning. You don't need perfect grammar. You don't need to memorize thousands of words. And you definitely don't need to sound like a native speaker to speak English well. You just need a few simple strategies, a new way of thinking about speaking, and consistent practice with real, useful English. Now, let me ask you something else. When was the last time you actually spoke English out loud? Not just repeating a word here or there, but forming full sentences, talking about your day, your plans, your thoughts in English. For many learners, the answer is not recently, or maybe even never. And that's a huge part of the problem. Most learners spend a lot of time reading, watching, listening. But speaking? That's often the skill that gets left behind. It's not your fault. Many courses, apps, and even classrooms focus on passive learning. You're told to study vocabulary, memorize grammar rules, answer multiple choice questions, but they don't prepare you for real conversations. They don't teach you how to feel comfortable opening your mouth and speaking, even when you don't feel ready. And let me tell you, no one ever feels fully ready. You have to speak while still learning. That's how real progress happens. Now, you might be thinking, but I don't have anyone to practice with. Or maybe, I'm shy, I'm afraid of sounding silly. And I completely understand. But here's the truth. You don't need a partner to start speaking. You don't even need to be in an English-speaking country. What you do need is the willingness to speak out loud every day, even if it's just to yourself, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, even if it feels weird at first. Speaking is not just about your mouth, it's about your brain. You have to train your brain to build sentences automatically without translating from your native language. And that only happens when you use English actively. It's like building a muscle. You can read about lifting weights all day long, but until you actually go to the gym and lift something, your muscles won't grow. It's the same with English. Listening and reading are great. They're important. But they're not enough to make you speak fluently. This podcast is for you if you're ready to change that. if you're ready to move from I understand English to I speak English. And I'm here to help you every step of the way. We're going to explore simple strategies that work. We're going to talk about real stories. People just like you from different parts of the world who were stuck and found their way out. And we're going to break the idea that you need to be perfect to be understood. That's simply not true. So if you've been feeling stuck, tired of studying and still unable to express yourself, stay with me. You're going to hear practical tips you can use right away, and hopefully, you'll also feel a little more hopeful and motivated to keep going. Because speaking English is not just possible for you, it's 100% achievable. Let's dive into this together and make today the day you stop waiting for the right moment and start speaking. You're here. You're listening. That means you've already started. Let's talk about something that most English learners experience, but very few people openly discuss. You might be listening to this right now thinking, I understand English. I watch videos. I understand songs. I can follow conversations. So why can't I speak? That's a powerful and honest question, and today, I want to go deeper into the real reasons behind this problem. The truth is, you are not alone. In fact, this is one of the most common issues I hear from learners around the world. People who spend years studying grammar, memorizing vocabulary, passing English exams, and still feel completely stuck when they try to have a simple conversation. It's frustrating, it's confusing, and sometimes it even makes you question your ability. But I want to tell you this very clearly. The problem is not you. The problem is how we've all been taught to learn languages. Let's break it down. One of the biggest reasons people don't speak English, even when they understand it, is fear. Fear of making mistakes. Fear of sounding silly. Fear of being judged. And this fear doesn't come out of nowhere. It often comes from school systems that focus too much on being correct, too much on rules, and not enough on communication. Maybe you were corrected too often. Maybe someone laughed when you made a mistake. Maybe you told yourself, I'll speak when I feel ready. But that moment of feeling ready never really came. I've worked with so many learners who are incredibly smart and hardworking. They know the rules. They have strong reading and listening skills. But when they try to speak, their mind goes blank. Or worse, they start translating every word in their head, trying to find the perfect way to say something, and by the time they form a sentence, the moment has passed. That mental translation is another major reason people get stuck. Your brain is working so hard trying to move from your native language into English that it slows everything down. It's exhausting. And it's not how fluent speakers operate. When children learn their first language, they don't learn by translating. They listen, they repeat, they guess, they learn by doing. And that same approach is what we need to bring back into adult learning. More focus on speaking, using, playing with the language, and less pressure to be perfect from the start. Another big reason people struggle to speak is a lack of practice. And not just any kind of practice, real active speaking practice. Watching a video in English or reading a blog post is great, but it doesn't train your speaking muscle. Speaking is a skill. It's physical. You have to move your mouth, form the words, hear your own voice. And for most learners, they simply don't get enough opportunities to do that. Either they live in a non-English speaking environment, or they're too nervous to speak with others, or they just don't know how to practice alone. So day after day, they consume content, but don't produce language. And the gap between what they understand and what they can say keeps growing. Maybe that's happening to you. You feel comfortable when reading. You understand most of what you hear, but when it's time to say something out loud, it's like hitting a wall. Your ideas are there, but your words are missing. That's because passive skills and active skills are not the same. Understanding is passive, speaking is active. And without building that speaking muscle, your fluency doesn't grow. There's also this belief that you need to study more before you start speaking. I just need a few more words. I'll start speaking after I finish this course. Maybe after I reach the next level. That mindset keeps you stuck. Because speaking is not something you prepare for. It's something you build by doing. Just like you don't wait until you're in perfect shape to go to the gym. You go to the gym to get in shape. Speaking works the same way. You improve your speaking by speaking, even when it feels messy and incomplete. And here's something else. Many learners expect to sound natural right away, but that's just not how language works. Think about how long it took you to speak your first language fluently. Years of mistakes, repetition, small conversations. English is no different. The good news is, as an adult, you can progress much faster because you already know how to learn. You just need to shift your focus from trying to be perfect to trying to be consistent. I've met learners from all over, people from Amsterdam, from Lisbon, from Prague, from Budapest, who all shared the same challenge. They understood English well but avoided speaking. When I asked them why, the answers were always similar. I'm afraid of saying something wrong. I don't want to sound stupid. I don't know what to say. These thoughts are more powerful than grammar or vocabulary. They create invisible walls. But here's the most important thing to remember. Those walls can be broken, and it starts with changing the way you think about mistakes. Mistakes are not signs of failure. They are proof that you are trying, that you are using the language, that you are learning. Every time you say something incorrectly, your brain gets feedback. You adjust. You get better. But if you avoid speaking completely, you never give yourself the chance to improve. I also want to remind you that fluency is not about knowing everything. It's about being able to say something even when you don't know the exact word. It's about keeping the conversation going. It's about connection, not perfection. You can speak with limited vocabulary and still sound natural. You can make small grammar mistakes and still be understood. In fact, that's how most people communicate in real life. The fear of speaking, the habit of translating, the lack of speaking practice, these are normal challenges, but they are also challenges you can overcome. With the right mindset, with small daily steps, and with the understanding that you don't need to wait for some magical moment to start speaking. You start now, where you are, with what you know. Let me tell you the story of someone who might sound very familiar to you. His name is Martin, and he's from Lyon, a beautiful city in the southeast of France. Martin is a calm, intelligent man in his mid-30s who always loved learning new things. A few years ago, he decided to improve his English so he could travel more easily, connect with international colleagues at work, and enjoy movies and books without subtitles. So he did what most people do. He downloaded apps, bought a grammar book, watched YouTube videos, and even took a few online courses. Every day after work, Martin would sit at his desk with a notebook, writing down vocabulary lists and reviewing grammar rules. He was very dedicated. He made flashcards. He listened to audio lessons while jogging. He even changed the language settings on his phone and laptop to English. For almost 2 years, Martin followed this routine. He felt productive. He was learning a lot of new words. And when he read or listened to English content, he understood most of it. But there was one problem. Every time Martin tried to speak English, especially during his travels, he would freeze. He couldn't find the right words. He hesitated. He translated everything in his head. He panicked when someone spoke too fast or used slang. He avoided conversations and chose to stay quiet, even when he really wanted to connect. Once, in London, he spent 5 minutes rehearsing a question in his mind, just to ask someone for directions. And when he finally asked, he didn't understand the reply and just smiled, pretending he did. Martin came back from that trip feeling disappointed. How was it possible to study so much and still not be able to speak? He felt like a failure, and for a few weeks he even stopped studying. He started telling himself things like, maybe I'm too old, or maybe I'm not good with languages. but deep down, he still wanted to speak English, not just understand it. Speak it, use it, enjoy it. That's when Martin discovered a language learning podcast, similar to this one, and started listening every morning. One episode in particular changed his perspective completely. It talked about the difference between learning a language and using a language. That episode explained that Martin's problem wasn't about intelligence or effort. The real issue was simple. He wasn't practicing speaking. He was learning about English, but he wasn't using English in real situations. This realization hit him hard. He looked back at his routine and saw it clearly. Almost everything he did was passive: reading, listening, repeating silently, writing. But he rarely spoke out loud. He wasn't training his mouth, his voice, or his brain to create sentences in real time. And more than that, he was aiming for perfection. He was trying to build perfect sentences in his head before speaking. He thought he had to be ready before using English in a conversation, and that mindset was keeping him stuck. Martin decided to make some changes. First, he gave himself permission to speak badly. That's right. He told himself, "I don't need to speak perfectly. I just need to speak." He started practicing with simple phrases, things like "I want a coffee" or "Where's the train station?" Nothing complicated, just useful real-life language. He practiced these phrases out loud while walking, cooking, or even in the shower. No pressure, just repetition. Next, Martin joined an online conversation group with people from different countries. At first, he didn't say much, but he showed up every week, listened, and slowly began to contribute. He made mistakes. He forgot words. He laughed at himself. And something surprising happened. Instead of feeling embarrassed, he started feeling proud. Every time he spoke, he felt stronger, more confident. Not perfect, but real. He also changed how he watched videos and movies. Instead of just listening, he would pause and repeat lines out loud. Sometimes he would copy the intonation of the actors. Other times, he would respond to questions as if he were in the scene. This kind of shadowing helped him get used to the rhythm of the language and stopped him from translating everything in his head. One of Martin's biggest breakthroughs came during a trip to Copenhagen. At a small cafe, the waiter spoke to him in English. Without thinking, Martin responded. It wasn't perfect, but it was natural. He ordered his food, asked a question about the city, and even had a short conversation about the weather. For the first time, he didn't freeze, he didn't translate, he just spoke. And it felt amazing. After that trip, Martin realized something powerful. Confidence doesn't come after fluency. Confidence comes before fluency. You have to allow yourself to speak, even when you're not sure. You have to practice, even when you're nervous. You have to use simple phrases, repeat them often, and focus on connection instead of perfection. Martin's story is not unique. I've heard similar stories from learners in Warsaw, in Florence, in Zurich, in Madrid. People who study hard, who know a lot of English but still struggle to speak. And the solution is not more grammar. It's not about memorizing thousands of words. It's about building the habit of speaking every day, even if it's just 5 minutes, even if it's just with yourself. So if you feel like Martin, if you've studied but still feel stuck, it's okay. You're not broken. You don't need to start over. You just need to shift your focus. Less perfection, more expression, less thinking, more speaking. Start with simple phrases. Practice out loud. Join conversations when you can. Speak even when it feels uncomfortable. That's how fluency grows. One of the biggest things I wish more learners knew is this. Speaking English well does not mean speaking English perfectly. I'll say that again, just so it really sinks in. Speaking well does not mean speaking perfectly. When you focus too much on perfection, you stop yourself from speaking. You hesitate, you second-guess every word, you get stuck. But when your focus is on clarity, on being understood, you start to communicate. And communication is the real goal of language. I've worked with learners from all over the world, people from Munich, Lisbon, Dublin, Prague, and the pattern is always the same. Many of them have a good understanding of English, but they freeze when it's time to speak because they think they need to say everything in the right way. They worry about grammar. They worry about the correct verb tense. They worry about using complex vocabulary. And while it's great to want to improve, chasing perfection too early often becomes a roadblock. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine you're at a restaurant and you want to ask for more water. A lot of learners think they need to say something like, "Excuse me, would it be possible to have some more water, please?" That's fine, of course. But what if you just said, "Can I have more water?" Or even, "More water, please." Guess what? All of these work. All of them are clear. All of them will be understood. You don't need to impress. You just need to express. Let's look at a few more examples. You don't need to say, "I am currently experiencing a bit of a problem with my internet connection." You can simply say, "My internet is not working," or even, "internet problem." In many daily conversations, these simple phrases are exactly what people use, even native speakers. And they are fast, natural, efficient. Here's another one. If someone asks you, "What do you do?" you might feel pressure to give a long, polished answer like, "I am employed at an international logistics firm where I oversee supply chain operations." That's okay if it comes naturally, but if it doesn't, just say, "I work in logistics," or "I help manage deliveries." The idea is to get your message across, not to make it sound like a textbook. Let's say you're meeting someone for the first time, and you want to say you're happy to see them. You might think, should I say, "It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance," or something like that? Honestly, "Nice to meet you," or even just, "Hey, good to see." You is more than enough. The goal is connection, not perfection. I want you to remember this every time you're about to speak English. Ask yourself, can the person understand me? If the answer is yes, you've done your job. That's it. That's success. You don't need the perfect accent. You don't need to sound like you're reading from a novel. You just need to be clear. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, "But Julia, I want to sound natural, and I want people to respect my English." That's totally understandable. But sounding natural and being respected doesn't come from using complicated words or long, formal phrases. It comes from confidence, from being present in the conversation, and from speaking in a way that is easy for others to follow. And most of the time, that means being simple and direct. Let me tell you a quick story about a listener from Naples named Julia. She's a nurse who works with international patients. When she first started using English at work, she tried to use medical terms and long explanations to sound professional. But she often got lost in her own sentences and had to stop and correct herself. One day, a patient asked her something simple, and instead of overthinking it, she just said, "I will check and come back." The patient smiled and said, "Perfect." That moment changed how she approached English. She stopped trying to sound advanced and started focusing on being clear. And guess what? Her communication improved, her confidence grew, and her patients understood her better. There's so much power in short, clear sentences. If someone asks you what time it is, you don't need to say, "According to my watch, it appears to be approximately 6:15. Just say, "It's 6:15. If someone says, "How was your weekend?" you don't need to give a long description. Just say, "It was good. I visited my family." If they're interested, they'll ask more questions. And that's how real conversations happen. I always remind learners that native speakers make grammar mistakes too. They use fillers like and They pause, they restart sentences, they say things like kinda or gonna. They focus more on getting their message across than making every sentence perfect. And you can do the same. One practical thing you can do is build a small collection of short, useful phrases that you can use again and again. Things like, I'm not sure. Let me check. Sounds good. That's fine. I don't understand. Can you repeat that? These are the building blocks of daily conversation. They're simple and they're powerful. You don't need to reinvent your vocabulary every time you speak. Another tip is to repeat these phrases out loud during your day. When you're alone, practice saying things like, I'm ready, I'm busy, it's okay, I like it, let's go. These are not just random words. These are the things people say every day. When they come out of your mouth naturally, you'll feel more fluent. I've had learners from Vienna, Oslo, and Rotterdam who told me that just this shift, from aiming for perfect grammar to aiming for clarity, made a huge difference in their confidence. They still made mistakes. Everyone does. But they started enjoying conversations more. They stopped apologizing every time they spoke. They felt more free. And that's what fluency really is. Not speaking like a dictionary, but speaking like a person who can connect. So remember, clarity first. Focus on being understood. Keep your sentences short and strong. Use phrases that work. Speak up, even if it's not perfect. When you do that, you'll see that English becomes less of a subject to study and more of a tool you can use every day. If you're still translating everything in your head before speaking, I want you to know something. You are not alone. This is one of the most common habits I see in English learners, and it's also one of the most difficult to break. But it's not your fault. It's a natural thing to do in the beginning. Your brain wants to feel safe, so it goes back to your native language to find the meaning first, then tries to match it in English. The problem is that this process takes time. It creates a delay. That delay leads to hesitation, and hesitation leads to frustration. You freeze, you pause, you say nothing. Not because you don't know English, but because your brain is stuck in translation mode. I've met learners from all over, Madrid, Krakow, Bucharest, Helsinki, who tell me the same story. They understand what they read. They can follow podcasts. They do well in grammar exercises. But when they try to speak, they get stuck. Why? Because they're translating every word in their head. They think in their language first, then try to find the English version. And that mental process is exhausting. So let's talk about how to fix that. The key is to train your brain to think directly in English. You don't need to be fluent to do this. You just need to start with very short, very simple thoughts. Let me give you an example. In your native language, you don't think, I will now say this sentence perfectly and with correct grammar. You just say, I'm hungry, or it's cold, or where are my keys? These are fast thoughts. In English, we want the same thing. Start by practicing simple, complete phrases that you can use during your day. Think of your morning routine. When you wake up, say in English, I'm tired. Then, I need coffee. As you walk to the bathroom, say, I'm brushing my teeth. When you get dressed, say, where's my shirt? These are small steps, but they help your brain stop going through your native language first. The goal is to skip the translation step completely. That only happens with repetition. You train your mind the way you train your muscles, by doing the same thing over and over until it feels automatic. Repetition is your best friend here. When you say the same short sentence many times, your brain gets faster at recognizing it and using it. Let's say you learn the sentence, I don't know. You practice it 10 times today. I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. It might feel strange at first, but tomorrow when you need to say it in a conversation, your brain won't need to translate. It will just come out. That's fluency. It's not about knowing a million words. It's about knowing a few words so well that they feel like they belong to you. Some learners ask me, Julia, should I stop using a dictionary? Not exactly. A dictionary is useful, but you want to avoid translating every single word. Instead, try to understand the meaning from context. If you're watching a show in English and hear the word raincoat, you might not know it at first. But if someone is putting on a jacket and it's raining, you can guess. That guessing skill helps you stop needing a translation for everything. Another method that works well is shadowing. This means repeating what you hear in English, out loud, without stopping to analyze. You can use this with podcasts, shows, or even short YouTube videos. Play a sentence, pause, then repeat it. Don't worry about understanding every word. Focus on the rhythm and the structure. This trains your ear and your mouth at the same time. And slowly it helps your brain stop translating. A learner named Tomasz from Warsaw shared something interesting with me. He told me that every time he heard English, he automatically tried to convert it into Polish in his mind. It made him tired, and he avoided speaking because he always felt slow. Then he started doing one small thing. Every morning, he picked 3 English phrases to repeat during the day. He would write them on a sticky note and say them aloud every hour. Things like, "Let's go," "I'm ready," "Not today." Simple, real phrases. After 2 weeks, he told me something had changed. For the first time, he was thinking in English without realizing it. And that's the goal. Thinking in English doesn't mean you never make mistakes. It means your thoughts don't have to stop and pass through another language first. It becomes more natural. You respond more quickly. You speak with more confidence. Even if your grammar isn't perfect, people understand you. You start feeling like English is a part of your life, not just something you study. A lot of this comes from consistency. 5 minutes a day is better than nothing. You can use those 5 minutes to talk to yourself in English. Describe what you're doing. "I'm cooking dinner. I'm walking to work. It's raining." If you don't know how to say something, keep it simple. Don't stop. Don't go back to your first language. Say what you can with what you know. That's how fluency begins. You can also use labeling. Put English words on objects around your home. Write mirror on your mirror, door on your door, window on your window. It sounds simple, but seeing the words every day helps your brain connect the English word directly with the object. No translation needed. The word becomes a part of your environment. And remember, you don't need to understand every single word to understand the meaning. Native speakers often skip words. They use slang. They speak fast. If you train your brain to listen for keywords instead of trying to translate every sentence, you'll follow more easily. And if you respond with short, clear sentences, you'll stay in the conversation. So my message for you today is this. Stop waiting for the perfect translation. It's slowing you down. Start training your brain to think in English using short phrases, daily repetition, and real-life practice. Speak, even if it's not perfect. Practice even if it feels strange. Because fluency doesn't start in your mouth. It starts in your mind. Let me tell you about someone I admire deeply. Her name is Sarah, and she lives in Warsaw. Sarah had a routine many of you will find familiar. Every morning on her way to work, she would listen to English podcasts. On the weekends, she watched English series with subtitles. She even read English news articles in her free time. Her understanding was solid. She could follow almost any conversation, especially when it was slow and clear. But when it came time to speak, when someone asked her a question or invited her to join a conversation, her mind froze. Her heart would race. She wanted to respond, but the words didn't come out. Or worse, they came out slowly and without confidence. Sarah told me she felt invisible sometimes. At a conference in Berlin, where English was the common language, she stayed quiet most of the time. Even when she had something valuable to say, she hesitated. Not because she didn't know what to say, but because she was afraid of saying it the wrong way. She was worried about grammar, about pronunciation, about what people would think. That fear stopped her again and again. And it wasn't about knowledge, because she had it. It was about confidence. Confidence to speak, to make mistakes, to keep going. One day, she decided something had to change. She wasn't happy just being a passive listener anymore. She wanted to speak, not just understand others, but be part of the conversation. That's when she discovered a practice technique that completely changed her mindset, something called shadowing. Now, if you haven't heard of shadowing before, it's simple but powerful. You take a short video or audio in English, and you repeat what you hear immediately out loud, trying to match the speaker's rhythm, tone, and pace. You don't pause to translate. You don't worry about understanding every word. You just listen and speak at the same time. The first time Sarah tried it, she felt silly. She laughed at herself. But she kept going. She started with short videos on topics she enjoyed: cooking, travel, motivational talks. Only 1 or 2 minutes long. She would watch once to get the idea, then play it again, and this time speak along with it. At first, she had to slow it down. She used the playback speed option to go to 0.75 or even 0.5 speed, and that was okay. The goal wasn't speed. It was confidence and comfort. Sarah told me that in the beginning, she could barely keep up. But something interesting happened after just a few days. Certain phrases started to feel natural. She didn't have to think about them anymore. She found herself saying things like, "That sounds great," or "I'm not sure," without hesitation. Those phrases became automatic. She wasn't translating in her head. She was thinking in English, and that's what shadowing does. It trains your brain and your mouth at the same time. It connects what you hear with what you say without needing a step in between. And when you do it daily, even for just 5 or 10 minutes, your fluency grows fast. After a couple of weeks, Sarah added something new. She began recording herself, not to share with anyone else, just for her own progress. She'd play a video, shadow it, then try to say the same sentences without listening. Then she'd compare. It wasn't perfect, but she noticed her speech becoming smoother, her voice stronger. She was building muscle memory. Sarah also made a list of 10 simple phrases she wanted to be able to say without thinking. Things like, "Can you help me?" "I don't understand." "What do you mean?" And "Let me think about it." These were phrases she could use in real life, and she repeated them throughout her day, while brushing her teeth, while making tea, while walking to the store. They became part of her thinking process. The magic here wasn't just the repetition, it was the decision to stop being passive and start speaking, even if no one else was around to hear. Speaking alone still counts. In fact, it's one of the best ways to build confidence before real conversations. And for Sarah, it made all the difference. She shared a story with me that really touched me. About a month into her new routine, she joined a group trip to Copenhagen. On the first night, at dinner with other travelers from all over Europe, someone asked her what she did for work. Normally, she would have smiled politely and said little, but this time she spoke up. Slowly, clearly, and with a smile, she explained her job, asked questions, and stayed in the conversation for over 10 minutes. She told me she couldn't believe how natural it felt. Yes, she made a few mistakes, but no one laughed. No one judged. In fact, one of the other travelers told her, "Your English is really good. You speak with confidence." That moment changed everything for her. She no longer saw herself as someone who understands but can't speak. She was now a speaker, a communicator, all because she practiced daily, all because she chose to use her voice, even if it was just in front of a mirror. So, if you see yourself in Sarah's story, here's what you can do. Choose short, real English videos. Watch them, then speak with them. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for perfect grammar. Don't worry about mistakes. Speak out loud. Use your voice. If it feels strange at first, that's okay. Keep going. Because every time you speak, you train your brain. And with time, like Sarah, you will find your voice. Let's talk about something simple but incredibly powerful: ready-made phrases. I call them your fluency shortcuts. If you've been learning English for a while but still find yourself struggling to speak, this might be the thing that changes your experience completely. When most people think about improving their English, they imagine memorizing long vocabulary, lists, or studying complex grammar rules. But what really helps in real conversations isn't how many words you know. It's how quickly and confidently you can respond. And that's where ready-made phrases become your best friend. I want you to think of your brain like a toolbox. When you're in a conversation, you don't have time to build a tool from scratch. You need something you can grab and use immediately. Ready-made phrases are those tools. They are short, common expressions that native speakers use every day. Things like, that makes sense, or I'm not sure, or can I ask you something? You don't need to analyze the grammar when you use them. You don't need to think too hard. They come out naturally, and that's exactly what makes you sound more fluent. Let me share how one of our listeners, Elena from Seville, used this strategy. She used to feel nervous during meetings at work, especially when her manager asked for her opinion. She understood the question but needed time to build a full sentence. That pause made her feel insecure. So I asked her to create a list of 10 short phrases that she could use in work situations. She chose things like, let me think about that. I agree with that point. That's a good question. And can we come back to that later? She practiced these every morning, out loud, looking in the mirror. And within 2 weeks, she told me something changed. She no longer paused when those moments came. Her brain already had the answers ready. They were part of her active English. So how can you build your own phrase bank? First, think about your daily life. What kinds of situations do you find yourself in? Do you talk to people at work? Order coffee? Travel? Join online meetings? Think of 5 or 6 common situations, and then write down 2 or 3 simple phrases you can use in each one. Let's take some examples. For greetings, you can say, "Hi, how's it going?" or "Nice to see you." At work, you might need phrases like, "Let me check on that," or "Can I get back to you?" In social conversations, try, "That sounds interesting," or "Tell me more about that." And when you don't understand something, use "Can you repeat that, please?" or "I didn't catch that." Now here's the key part. Don't just read these phrases. Say them out loud every day. Repetition is what makes them stick. Your goal is to be able to say them without thinking. Just like how you don't have to think about how to say your name, you want these expressions to live in your brain that way too. Automatic. Easy. Another important thing is to keep your phrases short and clear. You don't need long, complex sentences. In fact, native speakers often use very basic language in daily conversation. For example, instead of saying, "I am not in agreement with that statement," just say, "I don't agree." Instead of, "Would you kindly repeat what you just said?" just say, "Sorry, what did you say?" Simple is strong. Simple is fluent. 1. Trick that helped many of our listeners is keeping a small notebook or using a notes app on their phone. Whenever you hear a useful phrase, write it down. Then practice it later. Try to use it in a sentence. Speak it out loud. You can even record your voice and play it back to see how it sounds. This helps build awareness of your tone and rhythm, which are just as important as words. Let me tell you about David from Dublin. He was preparing for job interviews and felt stuck trying to speak smoothly. I suggested he build a phrase bank specifically for interviews. Things like, "Let me tell you about a challenge I faced," or "What I learned from that experience was..." He practiced these every day while walking his dog. When the interview day came, he was still nervous, but he felt prepared. He didn't have to search for words. The phrases came naturally, and he felt more confident from the very first minute. Remember, confidence doesn't start when you speak perfectly. It starts when you know you're ready. And preparing these phrases gives you that readiness. It's like learning dance moves before the music plays. When the conversation starts, you're not standing still. You're already in rhythm. Some of our community members even use flashcards. On one side, they write the situation, like asking for help, and on the other side, the phrase, like, "Can you help me with this?" This kind of practice turns passive vocabulary into active language. It's not about knowing the meaning of words, it's about using them. And one more thing I always encourage, use your phrases with your own voice. Don't try to sound like someone else. Speak how you speak. Make the phrases part of your identity. This makes speaking English feel more real, more comfortable. And when it feels comfortable, you'll want to do it more. So here's a challenge for you. After listening today, write down 10 useful phrases. Think about your week. Meetings, messages, family, friends, travel, anything. Choose phrases you can actually use, then say them every morning this week. It won't take long, just 5 minutes. But those 5 minutes, repeated every day, can change how you speak. It can give you the confidence to start and continue conversations. And remember, fluency isn't speaking fast. Fluency is speaking without fear. Let me ask you something simple. When was the last time you spoke English? Just with yourself? I know, it might sound strange at first. But speaking to yourself in English every day is one of the most powerful ways to improve your fluency, build your confidence, and stop being afraid of making mistakes. I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you wait for the perfect moment to practice with other people, you'll miss hundreds of chances to improve. But when you speak to yourself, the opportunity is always there. No pressure, no one correcting you, just you, your voice, and the words you already know. This is something I recommend to every learner, from beginners to advanced speakers. Chiumaya. Don't need special materials or expensive tools. All you need is a few minutes and your own thoughts. Start by thinking about your day, what you did, how you felt, what you plan to do tomorrow. Now take that and say it out loud in English. For example, you can say, "This morning I woke up at 7. I was tired, but I made coffee and felt better." Or, "Tomorrow I have a meeting. I want to prepare well, so I'll review my notes tonight." These are not complicated sentences, but when you say them aloud, you're training your brain to think in English. That's what fluency really is, the ability to form and speak thoughts without switching back and forth between languages. Let me tell you about Christina from Munich. She used to be shy about her English, even though she could understand almost everything. She never felt ready to speak in front of people. So I told her to try this. Every night before going to bed, she should speak to herself in English for 5 minutes. Just talk about her day, nothing more. She started doing that in front of her bathroom mirror. At first, it felt awkward. She told me she even laughed at herself. But after a few days, she got used to it. She started noticing which words came easily and which ones she forgot. She started learning how to explain things with simple language. And after 3 weeks, she noticed something big. When she had to speak to someone in English, she didn't freeze. Her mind already had the rhythm. She had already said similar things before, just to herself. This kind of solo speaking creates a daily routine that keeps your English active. It's different from just listening or reading. When you speak, even alone, your brain is doing more work. It's building connections between the words you know and the situations you live. And that's how you grow your fluency, through connection and use, not just memorization. Let's look at how you can start doing this today. First, choose a time that works for you. Maybe in the morning when you're getting ready, or in the car, or while walking your dog. You don't have to stop your life to practice. Just add a few minutes of English into the things you already do. Next, talk about real things. Don't try to be too formal. Say things like, I'm going to the store. I need to buy fruit and eggs. Or, I have so much work today. I hope I can finish everything. These short sentences, spoken out loud, are much more valuable than long, perfect paragraphs that stay in your head. You can also describe what you see around you. Look out the window and say, "It's sunny today." Or, "There are people walking their dogs." You're teaching your brain to notice the world and respond in English. This is what fluent speakers do. They don't wait for perfect grammar. They speak with what they have and they grow from there. Another great trick is to repeat after your favorite TV characters or podcast hosts. Listen to one sentence, pause, and then try to say it yourself. You don't need to copy perfectly. Just try to match the feeling, the tone, and the message. This helps you sound more natural and more confident. Even if you get it wrong, you're still improving your speaking muscles. Think of it like going to the gym. Each repetition makes your English stronger. One of our listeners, Alexei from Bucharest, started doing this while cooking dinner. He would speak out loud during the whole process. "I'm cutting the onions now. They smell strong. I need to add salt." It sounds simple, right? But after a few weeks, he noticed that when he spoke to his coworkers in English, he didn't have to search for basic verbs or simple phrases anymore. They were already in his active vocabulary because he had been using them every day. This kind of practice also helps you discover gaps in your knowledge. Maybe you want to say something but can't find the word. That's great. Write it down, look it up, and try again the next day. That's how you expand your language step by step. You're learning from real situations, your own life, not just from exercises in a book. Now let me be honest with you. Speaking to yourself won't feel natural right away. You might feel silly. You might forget what to say. That's okay. The goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to get comfortable using English with your own voice. And once you're comfortable with yourself, it becomes much easier to speak with others. Your brain gets used to finding the words, your mouth gets used to saying them, and your fear slowly disappears. So here's something you can do today. After this episode, take 5 minutes. Go to a quiet place. Think about your day and say it out loud in English. Describe what happened. Say what you're planning to do. Ask yourself questions and answer them. You can even pretend you're talking to a friend. Say things like, "Hey, guess what happened today?" And then tell your little story. You're not performing, you're training, and if you want to take it one step further, record yourself. Use your phone. Listen back, not to criticize, but to notice. Did you sound confident? Did you pause a lot? What phrases were easy? What phrases were hard? These are clues. They help you understand what to practice more. They show your progress over time. You'll start hearing your own growth. Your English voice is already inside you. You just have to bring it out. And the best way to do that is by using it every day, even if no one else is around. Talk to yourself, talk to your mirror, talk to your pet. It all counts. And it all adds up. Little by little, sentence by sentence, you're becoming more fluent. Let's talk about something that many of you might be feeling right now: fear of making mistakes. It's completely natural to feel this way, especially when you're learning a new language. I get it. The idea of saying something wrong, or worse, being misunderstood, can make you nervous. I've seen this in so many learners, and honestly, I've been there myself. But today, I want to remind you of something really important. Mistakes are not only okay, they're absolutely necessary. In fact, they're an essential part of your learning process. I want you to imagine this. You're trying to speak English and you say something that doesn't sound quite right. Maybe the verb is off or the word order is a little strange. Maybe your accent is a bit thick and the listener has to ask you to repeat. How does that make you feel? Frustrated? Embarrassed? Maybe even a little defeated? I totally understand how that feels. But here's the thing. That moment is not the end of the world. It's actually a sign that you're making progress. You're Stepping out of your comfort zone, and that's where the magic happens. Think about it like this. When a child is learning to walk, they fall down again and again. But each time they get back up, they get a little bit stronger, a little bit more confident. They're not worried about falling. They don't think, if I fall again, I'll never learn to walk. No, they keep going. They learn from each fall, and eventually they're walking, running, and jumping without thinking about it. And that's exactly how language learning works. The more you try, the more you practice, the better you get. Let me share a story with you about Carlos, a learner from Barcelona. Carlos had been studying English for years, using books, watching videos, and listening to podcasts. He could understand everything. But when it came to speaking, he froze. He told me, "I'm so afraid of making a mistake. I just don't want to sound silly." So I asked him to start with something small. Speak out loud for 5 minutes every day without worrying about mistakes. At first, he stumbled. His sentences didn't sound perfect. But over time, he became more comfortable. He began making mistakes, yes, but he also started to see them as a sign of improvement. Every time he made a mistake, he learned something new. And slowly, the fear of speaking began to disappear. He realized that the mistakes weren't failures, they were opportunities to improve. I know it's hard to shift your mindset. We all want to be perfect, right? Especially when it's something as important as speaking a language. But let me tell you something. Perfection isn't the goal. If you're aiming for perfection, you're setting yourself up for unnecessary stress and frustration. The goal is communication. And communication doesn't require perfection. It requires clarity, understanding, and the willingness to keep going, even when you make mistakes. Let's take a look at another example. Maria from Milan struggled with her English pronunciation. She knew a lot of vocabulary, but when she tried to speak, she felt like her words didn't sound right. She said, "People sometimes ask me to repeat because they don't understand me." Maria felt embarrassed every time this happened. She even considered giving up on speaking altogether. But instead, I encouraged her to embrace the mistakes. I told her that every time she had to repeat herself, she was getting one step closer to better pronunciation. She didn't need to be perfect. She needed to focus on getting her message across and practicing the sounds she found difficult. At first, it was hard for her. She would repeat words over and over, and it felt uncomfortable. But gradually, she began to notice improvement. Her pronunciation wasn't perfect, but it was clearer. And more importantly, her confidence grew. Maria stopped worrying about making mistakes because she realized that those mistakes were part of the process. They were teaching her, shaping her, and helping her become a better speaker. I want you to take a moment to think about your own language learning journey. How often have you been afraid of making mistakes? How many times have you held yourself back from speaking because you didn't want to say something wrong? Now, imagine if you could let go of that fear. Imagine if you could just speak, knowing that it's okay to make mistakes, because each one is a step forward. I promise you, mistakes are not the enemy. In fact, they're your best friend. When you make a mistake, it means you're pushing yourself. It means you're using your English, not just thinking about it. And that's the key to fluency: using the language. Fluency doesn't come from perfection. It comes from practice. It comes from trying, failing, and trying again. You don't need to speak perfectly to be understood. In fact, most native speakers don't speak perfectly. We make mistakes too. It's part of being human. What matters is that you're communicating. That's what makes the difference. So the next time you're speaking and you make a mistake, don't let it discourage you. Embrace it. Think, okay, I made a mistake, but now I know something new. I'm getting better. And then keep going. You might be wondering, But what if I make the same mistake over and over again? That's normal. It's called repetition, and it's a crucial part of learning. Just like how you learn to ride a bike, the more you practice, the easier it gets. At first, you fell off a lot, right? But then one day, you just started riding. The same thing happens with language. Repetition is key. The more you practice, the less those mistakes will happen, and the more fluent you'll become. Another thing I want you to keep in mind is that mistakes don't mean you're not improving. They don't mean you're not good enough. They mean you're learning. Every mistake is feedback. It's telling you something about what you need to practice more. And that's valuable information. So instead of getting upset when you make a mistake, see it as an opportunity to learn. One more thing. When you speak, don't worry about being judged. People who speak English as a second language often fear that others will criticize them. But the truth is, most people are just happy that you're trying to speak their language. They know how hard it is to learn a new language. And trust me, they'll respect you more for trying than for being perfect. So take a deep breath and keep going. Speak, make mistakes, learn from them, and speak some more. You'll be amazed at how much you improve when you stop worrying about being perfect and just focus on communicating. Remember, fluency is about trying, failing, and trying again. And the more you practice, the closer you'll get to speaking English with confidence. Today I want to share the inspiring story of Miguel, a man from Seville, Spain, who struggled with speaking English at work. Miguel's story is a perfect example of how consistent practice, small daily steps, and a shift in mindset can lead to real transformation. He's someone who, just like many of you, faced the challenge of speaking in English with confidence, especially in a professional setting. Miguel had been studying English for years. He knew all the vocabulary, understood grammar rules, and could read and listen to English with ease. But there was one big problem. He couldn't speak. Every time he had to speak English at work, whether it was in a meeting or even just chatting with a colleague, he would freeze. He felt like his mind went blank and the words just didn't come out. It wasn't that he didn't know what to say. It was that the fear of making a mistake or not sounding good enough stopped him from saying anything at all. Sound familiar? Many learners feel the same way. You understand English perfectly well, but when it comes to speaking, there's that hesitation. I remember when Miguel first reached out to me. He told me he had been working in a company where all the meetings were held in English. His colleagues were from all over the world, and they spoke English fluently. But Miguel felt like he was being left behind. He felt embarrassed to speak up in meetings, worried that his accent or mistakes would be noticed. He told me, "I know what I want to say, but I'm afraid it won't sound right." I could tell that Miguel was at a crossroads in his learning journey. He was frustrated, but also determined. He knew that to move forward in his career, he had to find a way to speak English confidently. So I suggested that he start with something small. Practice speaking every day, even if it was just for 5 minutes. I asked him to start practicing in front of the mirror. At first, Miguel felt uncomfortable. He wasn't used to speaking aloud, by himself. It felt strange to talk to his reflection, but I assured him that it was a great way to build confidence. The mirror, I explained, is a non-judgmental audience. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes. The goal is simply to get used to speaking out loud and to overcome the fear of making mistakes in front of others. Miguel started with simple sentences. He would pick a topic and talk about it for a few minutes in front of the mirror, using the vocabulary he already knew. It wasn't about speaking perfectly. It was about getting the words out and getting comfortable with hearing himself speak English. At first, he would stumble, and sometimes he would forget words. But over time, he became less self-conscious. The more he practiced, the more confident he became. But there was another thing Miguel needed to do. He had to start applying his practice in real-world situations. I encouraged him to take small steps, speak with his colleagues at work, even if it was just a quick conversation. He could ask a question or make a simple comment in English. At first, it was nerve-wracking for him. He was worried about his accent, about not finding the right words. But his colleagues were supportive, and no one judged him. They appreciated that he was trying to communicate in English. And this, over time, gave him the confidence he needed. I remember one conversation Miguel had with a colleague from Germany. They were talking about a project they were working on, and Miguel was hesitant at first, but he decided to go for it. He spoke slowly, using simple words, and his colleague understood him perfectly. They even had a brief but meaningful conversation. That moment was a turning point for Miguel. He realized that speaking wasn't about being perfect. It was about getting the message across and being understood. And most importantly, it was about overcoming that fear of speaking up. As Miguel continued practicing daily and having small conversations with his colleagues, his confidence grew. He started to feel more comfortable in meetings and eventually took the lead in several discussions. He was no longer afraid to speak up, even when the conversation was entirely in English. He had gone from someone who couldn't say a word in English without hesitation to someone who was leading meetings, giving presentations, and participating in important discussions, all in English. Now Miguel's English skills are stronger than ever. He can express his ideas clearly and confidently in any situation. He's even taken on a leadership role at work, which is something he never thought possible before. The best part? He doesn't worry about making mistakes anymore. He understands that mistakes are part of the process and that each one is an opportunity to improve. He knows that communication is what matters most, and that's what helps him succeed. So, what can we learn from Miguel's story? First of all, it's that practice really does make perfect. Not perfection in the traditional sense, but progress. Daily practice, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, can make a huge difference. Second, it's about taking action in real-world situations. It's one thing to study English in isolation, but speaking with others, even in small ways, helps you build the confidence you need. Third, it's about letting go of the fear of making mistakes. The more you speak, the more comfortable you become. And the more comfortable you become, the more confident you will be. Miguel's transformation wasn't instant. It took time, patience, and consistent effort. But the results speak for themselves. He's now not only comfortable with speaking English, but he's also leading meetings and engaging in conversations. At work, without hesitation. And if Miguel can do it, so can you. Living alone doesn't have to mean that you can't practice speaking English. In fact, it's an excellent opportunity to develop your speaking skills without feeling self-conscious. One of the biggest barriers to speaking English for many learners is the lack of conversation partners. But the good news is that there are many creative and effective ways to practice on your own. If you live by yourself, you can still build fluency and gain confidence in speaking English every day. Let's explore some of the most helpful strategies you can start using today. First of all, I want to reassure you that speaking alone does not mean you're wasting time or not practicing correctly. Many learners feel like they need a partner to practice with in order to improve, but that's simply not true. You can absolutely work on your speaking skills by yourself, and in fact, some methods may even help you feel more comfortable before speaking with others. So let's dive into some practical ways to practice English when you're alone. One of the easiest and most effective ways to practice speaking by yourself is to record your own voice. I know this may sound a bit odd at first, but hear me out. Recording yourself speaking English helps you identify areas where you might be struggling, whether it's with pronunciation, intonation, or fluency. It also gives you the chance to hear yourself speaking and notice the improvements you're making. The goal here isn't perfection, it's simply to track your progress. So, pick a topic, or even read a passage from a book or article out loud, and then listen to the recording. You can compare it to how you sounded a few days ago, or even a few weeks ago, to see how much you've improved. Next, let's talk about responding to videos. This is another fantastic way to practice English alone. You can watch videos in English, whether they're interviews, vlogs, or TV show clips, and respond to what you hear as if you were part of the conversation. For example, you can watch a video and pause it after a sentence or two. Then, repeat the sentence aloud and try to respond to it. This method helps you practice listening and speaking at the same time. It also helps you get comfortable with real-life conversations. You're essentially practicing how to react or reply in English in a natural conversational way. You can do this with YouTube videos, podcasts, or any content in English that interests you. Another great way to practice speaking alone is by repeating dialogues from TV shows or movies. This technique is called shadowing, and it's incredibly effective for improving fluency. What you do is choose a scene from a show or movie that you enjoy and listen closely to the dialogue. Then, repeat what you hear, trying to mimic the speakers as closely as possible. Pay attention to the rhythm of the language, the intonation, and even the emotions behind the words. By doing this, you're training your brain to sound more natural when you speak. It's like you're learning to speak like a native by repeating real-life conversations. You can even take this one step further by acting out the scenes. Try to get into character and pretend you're part of the conversation. This is a fun way to practice speaking, and at the same time, it helps with your pronunciation and fluency. When you speak out loud, you're not just memorizing words, you're practicing how to use those words in real-world situations. And this method doesn't require any special equipment or partners. You can do it all on your own, at home. Another creative idea is to practice using a mirror. Now, I know this might sound a little strange, but speaking in front of a mirror is a powerful tool for improving your speaking skills. When you speak to yourself in the mirror, you're not only practicing your words, but you're also practicing your body language and facial expressions. This helps you get more comfortable with speaking and expressing yourself. It also allows you to see if your mouth is forming the words correctly and whether you need to adjust your pronunciation. Speaking in front of a mirror can help you feel more confident because you're not speaking to an invisible audience. You're looking at yourself, which can be less intimidating. If you're someone who enjoys reading, you can also read aloud. This is a simple but highly effective method. Whether you're reading a book, a magazine, or even a website, try reading out loud in English. This helps you practice the sounds of English and the flow of the language. It's also a great way to increase your vocabulary because you're constantly exposed to new words. If you're unsure how to pronounce a word, take the time to look it up. Over time, reading aloud will help you feel more comfortable with the sounds of English. Speaking with yourself in daily situations is another great technique. For example, when you're cooking, cleaning, or doing any other activity, try talking to yourself in English. You can describe what you're doing or give yourself instructions in English. You can say things like, "I'm chopping the vegetables," or "Now I'll clean the kitchen," or even, "I need to buy some milk." These small moments of speaking in English throughout your day add up quickly, and they help you get used to thinking in English. This is one of the easiest ways to integrate English into your daily routine without needing a conversation partner. Now, let's talk about using language learning apps or websites. While these tools are not exactly the same as speaking with a partner, they can still be really useful for practicing speaking alone. Many language learning apps have speaking exercises where you can practice your pronunciation and even have your speech evaluated. For example, some apps will prompt you to repeat a sentence, and they will give you feedback on how close your pronunciation is to the correct form. While it's not the same as real conversation, it's still valuable practice and can help you build confidence in your speaking ability. Lastly, don't forget to use your imagination. When you live alone, you have the freedom to practice speaking in any way you like. Imagine you're in different scenarios, ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, or even giving a presentation. Act out those situations as if you were speaking with someone else. The more you practice these everyday scenarios, the more natural it will feel to speak English when you have the opportunity. Remember, it's not about perfection. It's about getting comfortable with speaking and consistently practicing. You don't need a conversation partner to improve your fluency. By using these creative methods, you'll build confidence in speaking English and move closer to your goal of speaking fluently. Creating a consistent speaking routine is one of the most effective ways to improve your fluency in English. It's not about spending hours every day, but rather making speaking a part of your daily life in a manageable way. Today, I'm going to show you how to create a simple speaking routine that only takes 10 minutes a day, yet can make a huge difference in how comfortable and confident you feel when speaking English. First, let's talk about the importance of consistency. Consistency is the key to building any habit, and speaking English is no different. If you want to improve your speaking skills, you need to practice regularly, even if it's just for a short amount of time each day. The more you speak, the more natural it will feel. And the best part is that you don't need to spend hours. Practicing just 10 minutes a day is enough to make significant progress. So, how do you get started? The first step is to set aside 10 minutes each day. It doesn't have to be the same time every day, but it's important to pick a time that works for you and stick to it. For example, you might decide to practice speaking for 10 minutes in the morning before you start your day, or you could do it right before bed. The key is to choose a time that you can commit to every single day. Now that you've decided when to practice, the next step is to decide what to practice. This is where many learners get stuck, thinking they need to come up with complex topics or difficult sentences. But the truth is, the best way to improve your speaking is to focus on phrases and sentences that you would actually use in real life situations. These are the phrases you would use when ordering food at a restaurant, talking to a friend, or asking for directions. By practicing these common phrases, you'll be able to use them in conversations naturally, and that's what matters most. Here's an example of how to organize your 10-minute speaking practice. Start by picking a specific situation or topic that you might encounter in your daily life. For example, let's say you want to practice ordering food at a restaurant. You can start by writing down a few sentences or questions that you might say in that situation, such as, "Can I see the menu, please? I'd like to order the chicken, please. How much is the soup of the day? Could you bring me the check, please?" Next, read these sentences out loud and try to say them just as naturally as possible. Don't worry about being perfect, just focus on saying the words clearly and confidently. You can even record yourself to hear how you sound. This can help you identify areas where you may need to improve, such as pronunciation or rhythm. After you've practiced these sentences a few times, you can try to make the practice a little more interactive. Imagine yourself in the situation. Pretend you're actually at the restaurant. You can say the sentences out loud and then pause to answer the other person in the conversation. For example, "Can I see the menu, please?" Then pause and imagine the waiter answering, and you respond with what you would say next. "I'd like to order the chicken, please." This technique is called shadowing, where you repeat the sentences, mimicking the conversation, and try to think of natural responses. The more you practice these situations, the more fluent you will become. Over time, you'll start to feel more confident in real conversations because you'll already be familiar with these common phrases. Another important part of building a speaking routine is to repeat your practice every day. Consistency is key here. You don't need to memorize a huge list of phrases in one day. Just stick to a few sentences or situations each day and practice them for 10 minutes. As you repeat the phrases day after day, you'll notice that your speaking skills improve gradually. One of the most helpful things you can do during your 10-minute practice is to focus on accuracy, not perfection. This might sound surprising, but it's important to remember that you don't need to speak perfectly in order to be understood. The goal is to get comfortable with speaking and be able to communicate clearly. Don't stress over small mistakes, just keep going and focus on being understood. As you continue practicing, your fluency will improve naturally, and your mistakes will become fewer and less noticeable. If you feel like you need a little extra motivation to stay consistent, you can make your 10-minute speaking practice fun and engaging. Try different approaches to keep it interesting. For example, you can practice speaking while you do other activities, like cooking, walking, or cleaning. You can also use language learning apps that offer speaking exercises, or listen to English podcasts and repeat sentences out loud. The more you can integrate speaking into your daily routine, the easier it will be to stick with it. It's also a great idea to mix up your practice topics. You don't have to stick to just one type of conversation every day. You can practice different situations, whether it's talking about your day, making small talk with a friend, describing what's happening in a movie, or even discussing your future plans. By varying the topics, you'll ensure that you're practicing a wide range of vocabulary and sentence structures, which will help you feel more confident in different types of conversations. Here's another tip. Keep a speaking journal. This doesn't have to be anything complicated, just a simple notebook where you jot down new phrases or sentences that you've learned, along with situations where you could use them. This will help you stay organized and focused on what you're practicing. You can also look back at your journal and see how much progress you've made over time. Finally, it's important to remember that speaking is a skill that gets better with practice. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel to speak in English. So don't be discouraged if you don't see immediate results. Keep practicing, keep speaking, and keep building your confidence one day at a time. Remember, all you need is 10 minutes a day to start making real progress. If you stick with it, you'll be amazed at how much you improve in just a few weeks. So go ahead and create your own 10-minute routine. Pick a topic or situation, speak the phrases out loud, and do this consistently every day. Over time, you'll see how much your speaking improves. It's simple, but it's incredibly effective. Elena had always been a dedicated student. Living in Milan, she enrolled in several English courses and spent countless hours with textbooks, apps, and online exercises. Despite all her efforts, when it came time to speak English, she would freeze. The words just didn't come out the way she wanted. She understood the language well. She could read books, watch movies, and follow conversations, but speaking it felt like an entirely different challenge. Elena often found herself asking, "Why is this so difficult?" She was frustrated. She knew the grammar rules. She knew the vocabulary, but when she was faced with a real conversation, she could hardly manage to form a sentence. She had put in so much time and effort, but it felt like all that work wasn't enough. She wasn't alone. In this, many people just like Elena face the same struggle. They know English well, but speaking it with confidence remains elusive. One day, while reflecting on her progress, Elena decided to take a different approach. She realized that the problem wasn't just about knowing English. It was about speaking it regularly, practicing in a real-world context, and shifting her focus from grammar perfection to communication. She understood that speaking wasn't just about getting every word right. It was about being understood and feeling comfortable in the conversation. So Elena began to make changes in her routine. Instead of sticking only to her textbooks, she decided to get out of her comfort zone and practice English in real-world situations. Milan, being a popular tourist destination, was filled with people from all over the world, and many of them spoke English. Elena realized that she could use her city as a practice ground, so she started taking small steps to engage with tourists in English. The first thing Elena did was visit the popular areas in Milan where tourists gathered. She would start by simply observing, listening to others speak, and picking up common phrases and expressions. At first, she felt nervous about approaching strangers, but she reminded herself that making mistakes was part of the learning process. So, she gathered her courage and started small. On one of her walks around the famous Duomo Cathedral, she approached a group of tourists who were trying to figure out how to reach their next destination. Elena offered to help, and in English, she asked if they needed directions. She was surprised at how easy the conversation flowed. She didn't focus on grammar or perfect sentences. She focused on understanding what they needed and responding in a way that made sense. The tourists appreciated her help, and Elena felt a sense of accomplishment. This experience boosted Elena's confidence, and she realized that speaking English didn't require perfection. It just required practice and communication. She continued to approach more tourists, gradually increasing the length and complexity of her conversations. She didn't worry about making mistakes. She simply focused on connecting with people and making sure they understood her. In addition to speaking with tourists, Elena also started practicing her speaking in other settings. She joined language exchange groups in Milan, where locals and tourists would meet to practice different languages. These casual meetups allowed her to practice speaking English in a relaxed environment, without the pressure of a formal classroom. Here she could practice speaking on a variety of topics, from travel to culture to daily life. She learned that the key to improvement was not to avoid mistakes, but to embrace them as opportunities to grow. Elena also started recording herself speaking in English. She would listen to her recordings, note areas where she could improve, and repeat sentences or phrases that she had trouble with. Listening to herself helped her become more aware of her pronunciation and fluency. Over time, this process became a powerful tool for self-correction. The most significant change in Elena's approach was that she stopped focusing on perfection. Instead of trying to speak like a native speaker or aiming for flawless grammar, she focused on communication. She realized that in real conversations, people care more about understanding each other than about grammatical mistakes. This shift in mindset helped her become more relaxed and confident when speaking. One of the things that helped Elena the most was finding ways to practice English every day, even if it was just for a few minutes. She set aside time to practice. With her language exchange partners, watch videos in English, and speak to herself in the mirror. She also started journaling in English, writing down her thoughts and then reading them aloud. By doing this consistently, she began to speak more naturally and fluidly. Elena's transformation was not immediate, but it was steady. As she continued to practice daily, she noticed her fluency improving. Conversations that once seemed intimidating became easier. She no longer froze when speaking. Instead, she spoke confidently, even if her sentences weren't perfect. She realized that the key to improvement wasn't in avoiding mistakes, but in learning from them and continuing to speak as much as possible. Now, Elena regularly speaks English with tourists and friends, and she feels much more confident in her ability to communicate. What's more, her progress has inspired others around her to follow in her footsteps. She encourages them to stop worrying about making mistakes and to focus on speaking as much as possible. She often tells them, "Don't wait until you feel ready, just speak." The more you do it, the easier it gets. Elena's story is a powerful reminder that learning a language isn't about achieving perfection. It's about making consistent effort, practicing in real-life situations, and being willing to make mistakes along the way. By stepping outside of her comfort zone, focusing on communication rather than perfection, and practicing daily, Elena transformed her speaking skills. She learned that speaking English with confidence isn't something that happens overnight, but with dedication and the right approach, anyone can get there. All right, let's take a moment to pause and reflect. I want you to think about where you are in your journey of speaking English. What's really stopping you from speaking fluently? I know many of you can understand English perfectly well. You can watch movies, listen to podcasts, read articles, and even follow conversations in English. But when it comes to speaking, that's where the challenge begins. You might even find yourself getting frustrated when the words don't come out the way you expect. So what's holding you back? Are you waiting for that perfect moment when you'll feel ready to speak confidently? Are you waiting for a magical time when everything will just click, and suddenly you'll have no trouble talking in English? Or are you simply putting too much pressure on yourself? Maybe you're worried about making mistakes, about sounding wrong, about not being good enough. I want you to know right now that these feelings are completely normal. You're not alone. Many of us go through the same thing. But here's the truth. There is no perfect moment. There is no magical day when you'll suddenly be ready to speak English fluently. The only way to get better at speaking is to start speaking, and to speak more. Think about it for a second. What if the real problem is that you're waiting for the wrong thing? Are you waiting for some kind of confirmation that you're perfect enough to speak English? The truth is, there is no such thing as perfect English. And there's no need to wait for perfection before speaking. It's not about being flawless. It's about being understood, about expressing yourself clearly, and about continuing to improve over time. Sometimes we hold ourselves back because we think we have to be perfect before we even begin. This can create a huge mental block. You might tell yourself, I'll speak when I know more grammar, or I'll speak when my pronunciation is perfect. But that's just an excuse to keep waiting. Perfection doesn't exist in language learning. Fluency does, and fluency comes from practice, mistakes, and persistence. The truth is, the more you practice, the more fluent you become. And you don't have to wait for the perfect moment to start speaking. So I want you to take a moment and think about what might be holding you back from speaking. Is it the fear of making mistakes? Is it the pressure you put on yourself to sound perfect? Or maybe you've been waiting for that perfect moment when everything just clicks. I want you to challenge that thinking. I want you to ask yourself, what would happen if I just started speaking today, with what I know right now? Imagine the progress you could make if you simply let go of the pressure to be perfect and started speaking more freely. It's so important to recognize that language learning is a journey, not a destination. And along that journey, mistakes are inevitable. They're part of the process. In fact, they're essential for your growth. So why not embrace them? Why not start practicing with the English you already know? Remember, speaking is about communication, not perfection. So you don't need to wait until you have all the answers. Just start using what you know and keep adding to it over time. Here's what I want you to do right now. It's a small challenge, but it can make a huge difference. Today, I want you to say 3 sentences in English about your day. It doesn't matter if they're simple. It doesn't matter if they're not perfect. It just matters that you speak. Tell me, what did you do today? What did you have for breakfast? How was your day at work or school? The goal here is not to make your sentences perfect. The goal is to start speaking in English, to start forming sentences, to start using the language. Remember, fluency doesn't come from waiting for the perfect moment. It comes from using the language consistently. Maybe you woke up and had coffee. Great. Tell me about it in English. Maybe you went for a walk or had a conversation with a friend. Maybe you watched a movie in English and now you can talk about it. Whatever it is, just speak about it. It doesn't have to be long or complicated. The more you do this, the easier it will become, and the more natural speaking will feel. This simple exercise will get you into the habit of thinking in English and speaking out loud. So, go ahead. Say your 3 sentences out loud today. If you can, even record yourself. Listen to your pronunciation, hear your voice, and notice how you feel. Do you feel more confident? Maybe a little nervous? That's okay. The goal is progress, not perfection. You're taking the first step toward breaking through those barriers and moving past the fear of speaking. Remember, this isn't about speaking perfectly, it's about starting, and it's about doing it consistently, no matter how small the steps may seem. Over time, those small steps add up, and you'll find yourself speaking more comfortably and more confidently. So, what's really holding you back? Is it fear of making mistakes? Waiting for the perfect moment? The truth is, you don't need to wait. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to start speaking, and you can do that today, right now. Try it. Speak those 3 sentences in English and feel the difference it makes. I'm excited for you to see how much you can grow just by taking this simple step. Speak out loud, think in English, and keep practicing every day. The more you practice, the more fluent you'll become. You've made it this far, and that's something to be proud of. As we wrap up today's episode, let's take a moment to reflect on the key points we've covered. If you've been listening, you've heard about the importance of moving past perfection, practicing daily, and using simple techniques to boost your confidence when speaking English. Let's quickly go over what we've discussed today so it sticks in your mind and you can start applying it right away. First, we talked about the truth behind speaking English. You don't need to be perfect, you don't need to wait until you feel ready, and you don't need to avoid speaking because you're afraid of making mistakes. The only way to get better at speaking is by speaking. Perfection doesn't matter, communication does. It's the message you want to share that counts, not how flawless your grammar is. Then I shared Martin's story, a French man who had spent years studying English but still couldn't have a conversation when traveling. He was so focused on perfection that he forgot the key element, practicing real communication. After he shifted his focus to using simple sentences and practicing regularly, he gained confidence and was able to speak with ease. His transformation didn't come from studying more grammar or vocabulary. It came from practicing real communication. We also discussed the importance of clarity over perfection. When you're speaking English, your goal should be to be understood, not to sound like a native speaker. So we focused on the idea of using simple, common phrases that work well in daily conversations. These phrases are the building blocks of communication. They're easy to remember, easy to say, and they'll help you feel more confident when speaking. I emphasized the importance of thinking directly in English. Translating everything in your head is one of the biggest barriers to speaking fluently. It slows you down, and it makes it harder to express yourself clearly. Instead, start thinking in English. Don't wait until you can form the perfect sentence. Just form a simple one, say it, and move on. That's how fluency is built. Another helpful tip I shared is the concept of repetition. Just like Sarah did in Warsaw, when you repeat phrases out loud every day, you train your brain to use English without thinking too much about it. Sarah's story was a perfect example of how repeating short sentences and using videos as mirrors can build confidence quickly. Then we talked about the power of simple phrases. Building a small bank of useful phrases that you can use in a variety of situations can really speed up your fluency. And the key is using these phrases out loud. The more you say them, the more natural they will become. Whether you're at the grocery store, at work, or just chatting with friends, having a few key phrases ready to go will help you sound more confident and make you feel more at ease. Another tip was to speak to yourself every day. I know it sounds a little strange at first, but trust me, it works. When you speak out loud by yourself, you're practicing in a real, tangible way. You're making English part of your daily life, and you're taking control of your learning. It's not just about memorizing vocabulary. It's about getting comfortable using the language in real situations. And don't forget, making mistakes is a part of the process. Mistakes are essential for learning. You can't be afraid of them. You can't wait for the day when you make no mistakes. That day won't come. What you can do is embrace mistakes, learn from them, and move forward. Fluency comes through trial, error, and practice. The more you practice, the better you'll get. Remember Miguel's story from Seville? He was embarrassed to speak English at work, but by practicing every day in front of the mirror and having short conversations with colleagues, he built his confidence. He didn't wait for perfection. He took action, practiced, and learned through experience. Now he leads meetings in English. His success came not from avoiding mistakes, but from embracing them and pushing forward. If you live alone, like many of you listening, don't worry, you can still practice. Use your environment to your advantage. Record your voice, repeat dialogues from TV shows or movies, or talk to yourself about your day. The key is to use the language every day, no matter who you're talking to. It's about creating a routine that fits into your life. The key to all of this is consistency. Even just 10 minutes a day can make a huge difference. Whether you're practicing new phrases, talking to yourself, or repeating sentences you've learned, the more consistently you practice, the better you'll get. Don't think about it as a big task. Just make it a part of your daily routine, and over time, you'll see real progress. Finally, think about what you would do differently. Are you waiting to be perfect before speaking? Are you holding yourself back because of fear or self-doubt? I challenge you to start today. Say 3 sentences in English about your day. It doesn't matter if they're perfect. What matters is that you're taking action. Start today and every day, and you'll see how quickly things start to change. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to thank you for listening. I hope you're feeling motivated to start practicing and speaking more confidently. You absolutely can become fluent in English. You just need to start using it more. Keep things simple, keep practicing consistently, and you'll see results. If this episode helped you today, I encourage you to share it with someone else who needs to break through their own speaking barriers. The more people we help, the stronger our community becomes. Keep going, keep practicing, and remember, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to keep moving forward. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.